Okay, so you guys have been loving the idea of me covering like 1990 comics, really 1980s, 1990s, and sometimes 2000 comics as well. But, anyways, we have been covering some storylines that took place in the 1990s for Captain America. Now, I got those storylines from an epic collection I bought a while back called Captain America Streets of Poison. Now, with you guys been loving those videos, I told myself, like, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and continue our coverage over this epic collection because there are at least two more stories we can cover from this one collection. Now, the next one is a two-part storyline. Now, I do have two reasons why I kind of want to go ahead and cover this storyline. Now, the first reason for me would really be more the idea of Steve Rogers having no choice but to go ahead and work with a character known as U.S. Agent. Now, as we all know, his real name is John Walker, but when it comes to John, there was a period in time when he was Captain America. Now, by this point, Steve was able to regain the mantle of that role, but the thing was, after losing that role, you had John continue on as U.S. Agent. Now, for John, he is known for, possibly crossing some lines. And so for Steve, that was the reason why these two characters could never truly work together. The idea that John is not really scared of the idea of killing people, crossing the line. But in this book right here, it's really more of Steve and John kind of finally coming together and having a better understanding for one another. Now, my second reason is really more the idea of Mike Farrell. Now, Mike Farrell was a neighbor of Steve Rogers and also Bernie when they had all lived together in the same apartment building. But at this point, Steve already moved out. But either way, for Mike Farrell, down the road in a later storyline, he'll become a new character known as Super Patriot. And I kind of feel like this is the starting point of him kind of going down in that direction where he becomes the super patriot and sometimes going toe to toe with Steve Rogers. So as we get into the opening pages of issue number 385, we do pick up with, well, a group called the Watchdogs. Now, the Watchdogs are really more of a extremist right-wing group. And so for them, their main goal is to bring back the traditional ways of America. And so with that being said, if anyone or anything out there stands in their way, then their goal is to go ahead and use violence or other means to get rid of those people or things to bring back their traditional ways into America. Like, for example, in the opening pages of this storyline, we see them going after a rap label group, not a group, but a rap label building that, of course, is used to help produce rap music. And so their goal is to burn down the entire building because rap music goes against what they stand for. Now, with all that being said, we learn that Mike is one of the watchdogs who is trying to burn down the place. Now, while trying to do that, he finds somebody who fell asleep from possibly drinking too much. Now, you do have Mike try his best to save that person, but you have the other members tell Mike, no, leave him behind. Because if anybody works for this kind of music, for this kind of organization, they deserve to die. And for Mike, he can't believe what he's hearing, but at the same time, he doesn't have a choice because the building is going to blow very soon. Now, you do have everyone being able to get out of there, but for Mike, he was barely able to get out of there. So he is somewhat injured from barely getting out before the building got blown up. Now, I do have a third reason why I kind of want to go ahead and continue my coverage over Captain America, and here's the reason why. Okay, so I love the idea of drama. And for Steve Rogers, he's right now in the middle of some crazy drama. And let me explain. It's really more of a love square situation because, okay, you have Steve Rogers who's somewhat in love with a character known as Diamondback, who was a bad guy who's trying her best to turn herself into a good guy. But while trying to see where that could possibly go, you didn't have Bernie return. Now, Bernie and Steve were very, very close. It seemed like they could possibly get married, but she left. But then she came back recently. And so for Steve, it's kind of like, well, I truly do like Diamondback, but at the same time, Bernie is also trying to get back with me. What do I do? Now you're probably wondering, hey, Fresh, that's just a love triangle. No, here comes the love square. You see, John Jameson, of course, the son of J. Jonah Jameson, is somewhat having some feelings for Diamondback as well. You see, the whole love square is right there. And so, right now, for me personally, it's a funny piece of drama for Marvel Comics. And so, for Steve, while being in his apartment, he's just working out, minding his business. But apparently, Bernie has been coming over almost every single day for just different reasons. We already know the main one is, though, to hopefully get back with Steve. Now, you have Steve leave out a picture of Diamondback to kind of say, like, hey, Bernie, I don't think you and I can work out together. And here's the reason why, because this picture of this girl named Diamondback could be my future girlfriend very soon. And so you have Bernie leave because she does not know what to do or like how are things going for her when it comes to winning back Steve Rogers. And so she goes over to the apartment of Mike Farrell because Mike is her friend. And Mike is also Steve's friend as well. And so it's really more Bernie hoping to get some guys' advice on how is she doing when it comes to getting Steve back. The problem is that as soon as she arrives, she is quickly kicked out of the apartment. And here's the reason why, because you didn't have another member of the Watchdogs appear because they want to see how Mike is doing, but also give Mike a new job coming up very soon. Now, before the guy appeared, Bernie could tell there's something wrong with Mike, and we already know why. The dude barely survived his last mission with the Watchdogs. But either way, once she's kicked out, you do have a guy say like, hey man, listen, we need you next Sunday. We're going after an artist who's really big on trying to use porn as an art. So we need your help to go ahead and get rid of him. And so you have Mike say he's down. Now, once the guy does leave, you then have Bernie go inside the apartment again to talk to Mike. And when she does, it's really more of Mike telling her like what's going on. Like for him, he's all like, listen, I hate the idea of what America is coming like. And so I had one of the watchdogs to help bring back the old ways into America. Now, when he says that, she's kind of like, okay, cool, you know what? That's your beliefs. But the problem is right now, you went out of your way to burn down buildings and to also kill off people possibly to help achieve that goal because there was somebody left in that building that they left behind when the building was blown up. And so it's her saying like, I'm not going to say anything right now to anybody, but I'm telling you, you need to go to the police because here's the thing. Once they are caught, you're still involved in a crime. You did burn down a building and you possibly killed somebody. You had crossed some lines. But while you had Mike telling Bernie everything, he had no idea that his place was bugged. And so you had other members of the Watchdogs outside and hearing that he just broke a rule, which is telling somebody about the organization and what they do. But now we have to jump over to Steve Rogers. Now you have Steve Rogers is training some new members of the Avengers like Rage and also Sandman. Yeah, guys, you heard that right. If you are a Spider-Man fan, there was a time where Sandman was an Avenger. Now, with that being said, while training, you didn't have Peggy Carter call up Steve saying, hey man, listen, Bernie wants to talk to you. Apparently, there's something going on. And so, of course, you have Steve leave to go handle that. But while you have Steve on his way over to the apartments of Mike, we jump over to Mike's apartment and we see that different members of the Watchdogs, they're moving in. They're hoping to get Mike by surprise and take him in for what he has done to their organization. The problem is that when they get inside his apartment, Mike is not there at all. Matter of fact, Mike and Bernie both had disappeared and who knows where. But you then have Steve Rogers enter the apartment as well. Now, guys, real quickly, this is the first time that Steve Rogers had fought against the Watchdogs. The last time they appeared, John Walker was Captain America. So for Steve, he has no idea who they are, but unfortunately, he knows one thing. Not unfortunately, fortunately, he does know one thing. they got to go. And so he begins to fight against them. But the question is right now, where in the world is Mike? And so we kind of find out that Mike went over to the guy who become the next target of the Watchdogs to warn that guy to get somewhere safe. Like, leave your artwork behind, but save your life. Now, for this guy, he's kind of wondering, how in the world am I supposed to believe that I'm going to be a target for some organization who's trying to kill me off? But at the same time, it's the artist saying, there's no way I'm going to leave my artwork behind because some random guy is trying to scare me out of my future business here. And so he tells Mike no. Now, once he does tell Mike no, Mike does get very upset about the idea that this guy is not trying to listen to him. But at the same time, it's also Mike kind of like, you know what? Never mind. Go ahead and let your artwork die, because it does go against what Mike stands for. The whole idea of porn basically being used as an art. Now we can go ahead and jump back over to Steve Rogers. And you have Steve Rogers still fighting against the different members of the Watchdogs. Now, unfortunately, you have Bernie appear because Bernie does live in the same apartment building as Mike. And so when she does appear, unfortunately, she does get taken as a hostage. Now for Steve, he has no choice but to go ahead and stop in his track. Now for the Watchdogs, they do leave a bomb behind, and their goal is to use the bomb as a way to keep Steve busy long enough to allow them to get away, but to also get away with Bernie. Now, once you do have Steve being able to disable the bomb, their plan worked. The Watchdogs got away with Bernie. Now, Mike does reappear on the outside part of his apartment building, but right now he sees police around the entire building. And so he believes that Bernie had called the police on him, not knowing that in reality, they were called because Steve was fighting the Watchdogs in his apartment. But either way, it's now Mike being very upset with Bernie, but also believes that he now is on the run. And so, as we dive into the final chapter for today's storyline, we do pick up with Bernie still with the Watchdogs as they take her back over to their boss. Now, their boss kind of wondering, like, why in the world do you have her here? And they tell him, like, well, we had to use her as a way to get away from Steve Rogers. And so you have the boss like, you know what? Fine. Go ahead and put her over there in that lodge area and we'll keep her safe for now. It will not do anything to her at all. Now, really, there was more things said in this 2-page section, but for me personally, it kind of showed how bad the Watchdogs truly are when it comes to their organization. Now, for Steve Rogers, unfortunately, he has no idea how in the world is he going to find the Watchdog. So right now, Steve just going through another training session. But while doing that, you also have the U.S. agent arrive. And this leads into one of my reasons of why I want to cover this storyline. Because for U.S. agent, he wants to go after the Watchdogs for what they did to his parents. And so once you have John confront Steve, Steve says, no, you can't come because I heard about you. I heard that you crossed the line way too many times. Now, by this point in Marvel's timeline, when it comes to John, he's no longer an Avenger. He was part of the West Coast Avengers, but he had left the team. And so for Steve, it's more of, okay, cool. If you're no longer an Avenger, then you have no right to be here at this base. And you have John walk away. Now, for John, he is not going to give up that easily because he wants to find the Watchdogs for what they did to his parents. Now, for Bernie, he kind of feels like he's on the run at the moment because when he arrived back to his apartment, all he saw were cops there. And he believed that Bernie had called the cops on him, not knowing that there was a completely different reason. And so it's him right now trying to change his appearance the best he can so that he's still able to move around freely without anybody trying to locate him. And we also get another glimpse into the whole idea of how the Watchdogs truly work with a hostage. Like, for Bernie, they don't know what to do with her. They take her over to a lodge, throw her into a room and say, hey, just stay here. Don't worry. Everything is going to be okay. And for me, it was like, why not go ahead and just release her by this point? Because it kind of seems like you don't have an actual purpose for her anymore because you don't know what to do with her. But now we're able to jump back over to Steve Rogers. Now, for Steve, he's talking to John Jameson, not John Walker, about John Walker, actually. But while you have the two characters talking, you didn't have Fabian walk in. Now, around this time in Marvel Comics, the Avengers had this thing called the support crew, who went out of their way to, well, basically support them behind the scenes, doing small tasks. And so for Fabian, he was one of the members of that crew. Now, for Fabian, he was able to figure out that 14 or 15 people have disappeared over a short period of time. Now, here's the thing. All these different people are people who the Watchdogs would go after because those people go against everything the Watchdogs stand for. And so you have Fabian tell Steve, I think I know who may be the next target of the Watchdogs. And of course, it's the artist from the last chapter. But now we have to jump over to Mike because this leads into the moment where you have Mike, well, get caught by the Watchdogs because the man still believes it's only the police who are coming after him, not the Watchdogs. And so you have Mike go over to the guy we saw earlier who came and check in on Mike after his first mission. Now for Mike, he's all like, hey dude, listen, the police are trying to come get me. I need somewhere to hide. I came to you, my fellow member of the Watchdogs. Now, this guy's all like, this is perfect because we have been looking for you. Yeah, you know what? Go ahead and come into my apartment. They go inside and you have that guy call up to the higher up saying, I have Mike here. Like he believes the police are the ones after him, but really it's us who are after him. Now, Mike hears some of the call, but he believes once again that this guy is calling up the police. But in reality, it's not the police again. Now, you do have Mike and this guy get into a fight, but unfortunately, Mike is knocked out very easily. But now we jump over to Steve Rogers. Now, when we do, it's really more of Steve trying his best to protect the artist by saying, hey man, listen, let's go ahead and just switch spots. Let me go ahead and pretend to be you so that they grab me instead of you, and then I am able to go back to their base and bring down their entire organization. But the problem is, like last time, the artist is not trying to listen. Now, with that being said, you also have the artist tell Steve, this is the second time somebody tried to tell me something bad is going to happen to me. And so for Steve, he's kind of like, wait, hold on now. The second time? But for Steve, he can now use the artist as a way to find the Watchdogs. Plan B. Go ahead and let the Watchdogs grab him. And once they do grab him, then follow them back to their base. And just like that, all of that happens in like one single page. And so now Steve is able to attack the home base of the Watchdogs. For this artist, Eric, he is brought over to the other hostages who were grabbed earlier, the one Fabian had talked about earlier. And so right now, you have all these different hostages going through what I call shock therapy, where it's their goal to continue to shock you over and over again until they're officially able to brainwash you and make you think about the old American ways once again. And so you then have Eric now being put in that same process as the others. But getting back over to Steve Rogers, his main goal is to, sneak around the base of the Watchdogs to find Bernie. Now, instead, he does find Mike first because he went to the top level when it came to looking around the place. Now, while doing that, he tells Mike, hey, stay here. I'm trying my best to find Bernie, but to also sneak around. So stay here, be quiet. Now, here comes the big problem because while you have Steve trying to be quiet, well, John Walker appears, U.S. agent. He just barges right into the building. He's all like, nah, Watchdogs, let's go. It's time to battle. Now for Steve, he's all like, okay, you know what? John is going to ruin my whole entire mission right now. I'm going to go ahead and just sneak away from his battle, go back downstairs, and hopefully down there, I'll find Bernie. Now, I want to get back over to John Walker, and here's the reason why. Because for John Walker, it's really him now trying to be a better person. Let me explain. Because for John Walker, he was not afraid to kill anybody. Like for Steve Rogers, he was afraid of the idea of John killing somebody on this mission. But it's John saying like he had promised that he would no longer be that type of person. And so it's him saying like, hey, even though the Watchdogs had attacked my parents, they deserve to die. I'm not going to do that at all. And honestly, this kind of begins the whole idea of the possibility of Steve kind of looking at John different because at the end of the book, you do have U.S. agent and Steve Rogers being able to regroup. We also see that for Steve, he was able to find Bernie and a few other people in the building. And when you have the two guys come back together, you have John tell Steve, like, hey, listen, I was able to follow you. Now, in reality, when it came to John, he placed a tracker on Steve's shield, and Steve did not find the tracker yet. But either way, it's Steve kind of realizing in the possibility that John may be a better person now. Now, with that being said, you didn't have Mike Mount say, hey, I'm Mike. I was part of the Watchdogs, and all of this right now, it's my fault. It's my mistake. And the book really ends on that note right there. So with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.